Know the difference with Annex Wealth Management, and that's the goal of this segment, an opportunity to meet a real-life client of Annex who we work with for investment, retirement, estate, and tax planning. It is another Hear the Difference conversation. Let's say hello to Gert. Hey, Gert.
Hey, Danny. How are you today?
Good, thanks. Hey, at the top, let's get some business out of the way, some quick questions. You are a client of Annex Wealth Management?
Yes, I am.
Annex is not providing any type of compensation for your time on this segment?
That's correct.
And there's no conflicts of interest between you as a client and Annex as a firm?
That's correct.
Complete transparency, ladies and gentlemen. I met Gert doing what we call funishment. How would you describe what it is that we do? It's something that makes no sense to most people.
Well, Danny, we like to go rucking, which is essentially walking around with 40-pound backpacks on our backs for between 3 and 6 miles. And we also do this at 5 o'clock in the morning, 3 days a week. Then after that, we lift heavy things like sandbags to try to maintain some strength. Essentially, I was really just looked at it as training for life.
There you go. And that's why we call it funishment. So in the course of our rucks and our various workouts, the conversation is all over the place. You and I are about the same age, and retirement, I'm sure, must have come up at some point. And plus, Deanne Phillips from our crew was part of the gang as well. At the time, you were not that far from actual retirement, were you?
Yeah, that's correct, Danny. I think we met about 2 years ago during our rucks. Our conversations go a lot of different places while we're walking next to each other for 2 to 3 hours. And one of those places was retirement. For me at that point, it was about 2 to 3 years away from retiring.
So at that point, did you have any kind of a plan in place? I'm sure you had investments.
Actually, I had lots of plans in place. The problem was that they were really just strictly for my investments. I really hadn't looked at any kind of tax planning. I hadn't looked at any kind of insurance after I left my current job because I'm retired before I hit 65. I had lots of things all over the place, but I didn't have any one person that was helping me to coordinate all those aspects. Through our discussions, I ended up realizing very quickly that I really needed to have someone that was way smarter than me about those things, specifically helping me coordinate all the aspects of my retirement.
Now, you're a pretty smart guy. You got an engineering background, and I'm going to guess that probably means that you approach things from an engineering type of standpoint.
Very much so. I did start putting money away very early. As soon as I got my first job out of school, I started putting money away, and then I took advantage of my employer's 401k plan. So my wife and I have been pretty much saving our entire lives. We developed a pretty good nest egg. The problem that we ran into is as retirement got closer, I realized that there was a lot more to my overall planning than just strictly the investment part of it. If I'm going to take retirement funds, where do I take them from? How much income do I want in a given year? And through our discussions with Deanne on our rucks, she really helped me kind of understand that Annex was the place to help me with all of those aspects of retirement. What I was really looking for was one place, so I only had to make one phone call. If I had a question about whether it was my wife going on to Medicare or whether it was my personal insurance, as far as my health insurance, or where my investments were, trusting the person that was making those decisions for me was absolutely critical to going with Annex.
And you went through all the typical steps that everybody does, the portfolio analysis, the meetings with the wealth manager, and when it was right, you became a client of Annex. Was there a moment when you thought, you know what, these people are different?
Absolutely. I was actually having a discussion with Deanne about something with regard to rolling my 401k over to Annex and a couple of other questions that I have. And we talked for probably about 20 minutes before I even realized that she was actually on vacation when we had that conversation. Yet she still picked up the phone because that was important to her. And I've never had a group that I worked with before where somebody picked up the phone when they were on vacation because it was an important question that I had. And that really meant a lot to me. As I get a little bit older, I realize that my time is worth something. When you've got limited amount of time left, you want to make sure that you are taking best advantage of it. I simply didn't have the time to do the research that I really would have needed to do the things that I've done with Annex. And another thing that was really important to me was to be able to find someone that my wife, Christine, was comfortable with. I've seen too many cases, my mom's case in particular, where something happened to the husband or another partner in the relationship. And in my case, I didn't want Christine to be left not understanding or not knowing where everything was placed and not knowing what to do. I've seen that cause way too much heartache.
So you are freshly retired. I would love for you to share the story about the grand adventure, and it is a grand adventure.
My wife and I are going to be leaving on our 32-foot Nordic tug, and we're going to be completing a trip that's called the Great Loop. It's about a 6,000-mile trip that we take around the eastern half of the United States. We'll leave the Great Lakes, we'll go over to the Mississippi, then down to the Ohio River, then take the river system down to Mobile, Alabama. We'll spend the winter down in Florida and the Bahamas, and then in the spring we'll come back up the East Coast, and we will go up into Canada for the summer, and then we'll spend the summer up into Canada and the Great Lakes. We'll be coming back to our home port.
Folks, you're listening to this, so you can't see Gert, but he's actually in motorcycle gear. You're involved in an organization that does some pretty amazing work with abused children.
Working with a group called Guardians of the Children. We're an organization. We have 46 chapters in 19 states, and then we have 6 chapters in Canada. We work with abused children and their families to try to give them strength and stability throughout their ordeal. We work with the public also to educate them and to recognize and react to child abuse. When a parent or guardian of an abused child approaches us for help, we actually adopt the child into our group and give them their own road vest and their own road name. We will escort the family to court and be there for them to provide support for whatever they need as far as help and support when they are in court. We're just really there to be emotional support and to let them know that they're not alone.
That's awesome. Gert, we are glad to be your partner on land, two wheels, and on the water. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danny.